I don't know that I really thought I was ready for it, but I was sort of annoyed that some of the men in the organization were raising their hand and saying, oh, I'm going to be the next president or I'm going to apply. And I was at lunch one day bitching really to one of my friends about all this going down. And she just looked at me and she was like, Kelly, why not you?
But it's not until you really believe that you deserve not just a seat at the table, but maybe the whole damn table. That's when like the magic really starts to happen.
And then once you see it, it's unstoppable. Operating on like low grade rage like every day. And so how to not put my head in the sand and continue to stay informed, get involved, and really be part of the solution.
What if the most powerful thing holding women back in their careers isn't the glass ceiling? It's not yet knowing how strong they already are. Today's guest has spent decades proving that wrong, one woman at a time. Kelly Mooney started her career as an individual contributor at a small digital agency called Resource. Over nearly 25 years, she climbed every rung, from middle management to the president to CEO, and grew the company's revenues 15 times over, scaling to 400 employees across 5 offices with clients like Procter and Gamble, Walmart, and Victoria's Secret. When IBM acquired Resource Amirati in 2016, Kelly became the first ever chief experience officer at IBM iX, one of the world's largest digital consultancies. But her most meaningful chapter came next. In 2021, Kelly founded Equipt Women, a public benefit corporation dedicated to helping early and mid-career women rise. She's coached women across the globe, partnered with companies like Salesforce and Paramount, and launched 100 Days for Women, offering complimentary coaching to women worldwide. She's been featured on CBS, CNN, NPR, and the Wall Street Journal and Fast Company, and she's spoken at Harvard Business Schools, USC, and the Ohio State University. And now she's written a book that she always wishes she had. Up, the playbook for every woman on the rise. Today we're getting into all of it, and I promise you it's going to be a good one. So let's say hello. What's up, Kelly? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Molly, nice to be here.
Hey, it's the honor is all mine. I am like wholly impressed with everything that you have done, working up the ranks in these big corporations. I know that takes a lot of sacrifice and compromise and patience. You're probably better at holding your tongue than I am, but I think everyone on the planet is better at that. So let's talk about, you spent 25 years at one company. And you grew up, in there, not grew up, but you literally had every role in that company. So what was the moment that you realized that you were actually building something?
Good question. I mean, I think the first couple years there for me were really rough. And like in any new job, you don't really plan to stay for a decade or two or more. But I realized I was in a culture led by a woman who really saw the world differently and saw huge potential in the talent there. And so, she ultimately saw that talent in me, and I realized I could find my way by not having a traditional job description, by creating my own role. But really it took, how many years? So probably it was about 8 maybe that I was there. 7 years when the company was going through a lot of change and the founder was looking for a president of the organization. And I don't know that I really thought I was ready for it, but I was sort of annoyed that some of the men in the organization were raising their hand and saying, oh, I'm going to be the next president or I'm going to apply. And I was at lunch one day bitching really to one of my friends about all this going down. And she just looked at me and she was like, Kelly, why not you? And I have to tell you, Molly, it literally just stopped me in my tracks because I had not even seriously considered myself. And so it was that moment that I was like, yeah, like, why not me? And I just raced back into the office and I went to the woman founder, and she was heads down at her desk. And I said, hey, I want to be considered for this role that's opened up to be president of the firm. It was quite small then. And she just looked up to me and said, it's about time. So that moment really changed everything for me because she was waiting for me to see my own potential, for me to raise my hand instead of waiting to be selected. So really, that was the moment I knew that I was going to have a longer career there.
That's such a good point where like you saw like she was waiting for you to see it yourself, and that makes
Yeah.
sense because I think a lot of times we're looking for that like permission or that person to save us or that magic pill, and it's like you can have a coach and you can do those things, but it's not until you really believe that you deserve not just the seat at the table, but maybe the whole damn table. That's when like the magic really starts to happen. Like nobody can try to boost you up to be that if you don't really believe it yourself.
And if you're not willing to take sort of make a bold move. And, I could have just sat with that and simmered with that, why not you insight that my friend had and done nothing. I mean, that was another option, but it didn't even occur to me to do nothing because I'm so action oriented. And so it really propelled me in a way that I needed. I think sometimes we need somebody else to hold up that mirror to see our own potential. And then once you see it, it's unstoppable.
Well, one of my favorite quotes is you can't read the label from inside the jar, and it's so accurate. That's why sometimes your girlfriends are like, girl, he's trash, and you're like, oh, okay, because you never see it yourself. You need that third party perspective. So speaking of which, if you could look back, right, and look at yourself in that time, is there anything that you would change about your time in that company?
Oh, in that company, and I had another company where I had a lot of experience before that. I think the thing that I would change and what I'm advocating for is really to be more intentional about what you want. So I think what I did for far too many years is I just waited for things to unfold. I waited for somebody to recognize my work. I waited for my manager to tell me I was getting a raise. I waited for the plum assignments to be handed out and then wonder if I was going to get one. And so I think in going back, I would, the only thing I would really read, think, and maybe just learn is how to self-advocate and how to speak up without bragging and how to ask for what I want without being a bitch or, any of that. So I think that's the lessons that I learned way later in my career. And part of the reason I wanted to write this book was to help women learn how to do it earlier and learn how to do it with confidence. And so it's not difficult, but it takes, practice and awareness.
When once you do it once and then you see the results and then you go, wait a minute, what else have I left on the table? What else can I change, right? Like, it's like magic erasers, you start one place in your house and then all of a sudden you're walking around for hours going, what else can I clean? What else can I improve? What else can I assert myself in? I really love that in your book you don't use the word should, and I think that's really awesome and clearly intentional. So give me some background on that.
Yeah, it really was intentional. And also that was difficult because you don't realize how many times or how often we use the word, I should go to the party, or I should want to, to go after that job, or I should hang out with these people, whatever it is. We have a lot of shoulds in our lives. And many years ago, it was really almost 25 years ago, we were having a work session with a couple of coaches. And the one coach in particular said, I want to invite everybody to unlearn the word should. And it never occurred to me until that moment, like how powerful that word is over us, because it's typically societal's expectations or what other people's expectations are of us. And it not really related to what is our intrinsic desire. What do we really want? And so in writing a book about career, how to, help women build a career in life they love, there isn't one recipe, there isn't one path, and that's the whole point. So it was important to me to never use that word. So we use the word consider, might, maybe, explore, try, with the idea that the world has a lot of things to open up to us, or can, when you look at it with your eyes wide open, the world will open up to you. But if you lock yourself into this box of what you should do, you're usually going to be doing it with some degree of resentment. And so I was trying to liberate people from that.
That's how I feel every time I get on my treadmill. I feel a little resentment. I'm not gonna lie, but I know I should get on it. But I mean, it's so true, and I hear it a lot with women. We're like, I know I should have a funnel, and I know I should, and it's like, well, why? You know, like, who told you this information? Like, let's just reel it back. Like, you're not doing anything wrong, so let's start from there.
Well, and I think when you get clear about what you're working toward, what life you want, what career you want, then everything becomes steps towards that, so that you might need to do it, or you might want to do it, or it might be required to do it. Then those become different reasons, because they're pointing to a place you're trying to go. Is very different than, I don't know, I'm just waking up and I'm just winging it, and I guess I should do that, or I should do that. Then the shoulds have no context, and they're meaningless. And that's why I really try to just avoid that word. So when you know where you're working towards, you might not know the exact destination, but you have a goal, or you have a desire and you want to work towards it, then you start taking steps. And then I don't think we need to use that word should. We use the word, this is what I am doing and I will do. So it's really just being more aware of our language, I think.
Is that part of the principle of lead yourself? Is that really kind of the core of that?
I mean, yeah, lead yourself is really asking people to stop waiting for somebody else to point the way, stop waiting for somebody else to see your potential and your possibilities, and being really intentional about what you want and where you want to go, and really who you are and the kind of person you want to become, and then taking the steps towards that. I know it can sound sort of like woo-woo to be like, oh, you have to become intentional, but there is really a difference between waking up every day and leaving things to chance versus saying, hey, I'm working towards that promotion, or I want to write a book, or I want to become a public speaker, or I want to, move across the country or into a new country like you did. Once you become very intentional, then you start taking the steps towards that.
Well, and I think as women, we don't often think about what it is we do want, especially if you're a mother and a wife. You never think about what you want. You know what I mean? Even comes down to food. You're eating like what's left on the kitchen counter half the time, right? You're eating juice boxes and fruit snacks. Like, what is my life? So it's so counterintuitive, from women in that position. And then women in the workplace, if you say what you want, then it's like the audacity of her to be so clear on what she wants. But if you don't know how you want to live your life every day, to like, what is it, cold outside? Is it hot? Is it light? Do you stay in bed for 2 hours? Do you get up and work? Really, what do you want? What is the actual life you want?
You are hitting it right on the nail on the head, Molly. Yes, I think women aren't programmed to answer that question because they're wired to think about others first. And often most of the time. And so in my new book, there's a whole section on knowing, arriving at what do I want, like how to do that. Because I realized in spending so much time with women all over the world, they were struggling with that answer. And so how do you get to that answer? And so we go through all the steps for that. But also, I think sometimes when that question is too big for people, you can break it into a smaller piece to say, what do I want more of? So you might want more of time with friends, or you might want more quiet time, or you want more visibility at work. What do I want less of? And so I think you can start chipping away at it that way as well. So there's lots of ways to arrive at it, but I think women don't sit with the question as much as I would like them to, and I think they would benefit from.
I could dig it. I went to a women's retreat last year. It was a client of mine, so she invited me. It was in Costa Rica. And we did a lot of journaling and breathing, which is very effective, by the way, when your phone's not in your hand, just breathing and thinking and writing. And one of the questions was, what kind of woman do you want to be? And that was, that's a really big question, right? We so focus on, well, I want to be thinner, or I want to have more money. But no, what kind of a woman do you want to be? So it's when you, like you said, if you really sit with these questions, well, it's scary for a lot of women, right? I'm going to kick down the door. I'm telling everybody what I want, whether you want to hear it or not. But that's not how everybody is built, And I'm not that way in every aspect of my life either. You know what I mean? There's certainly other
areas.
I
think that you arrive at different answers at different stages of your career too. Certainly at this stage, I'm really clear that, I want to, help more women succeed in building the career and life they love. But that wasn't what I was focused on 10 years and the 10 years before that and so on. And so I think the answers become different. But I love the question, what kind of woman do you want to be? And because I think that there's an opportunity for so many of us to be role models for others that are trying to, find their way and don't want to be in hustle culture and don't want to have to sacrifice a personal life to have a career. And I don't think that you have to do that, but I do think you have to become savvy at navigating, and that's part of what we get into in the book too. I talked to you earlier about a whole section like get in the game, and you use the phrase, what'd you say, get in the arena or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's that whole like, hey, you can sit on the sidelines all day long and bitch and moan and be unhappy, or you can get in there and mix it up and get a little dirty and get your knees scraped and try some things. And almost always you're going to be more pleased with those outcomes than just sitting on the sidelines and wishing things were better.
For sure. I'm a principle over circumstance kind of girl, so I'm not built to look the other way. I just can't. I wish I could. My life would be a lot easier, honestly. So speaking about getting in the arena and being a woman in today's society, let's talk about the ERA because, and DEI because, we would be remiss to say women go out there and have the life you want and the career you want while we are losing so much ground constantly. Totally. And so, what is DEI dead and what does that mean for women? How is that really impacting us right now?
I mean, it's definitely under attack. There's no denying that. I mean, when Trump put out his executive order, a lot of the public companies obviously pulled back really dramatically. And, maybe there was some correction that needed to happen with any movement. Maybe there's overzealousness in certain areas. And so that might have made some sense, but I think that the overreaction has been, I think I saw some data recently that 68% of corporations in their filings, talked about getting rid of their DEI or drop the term completely. But there's a little light in the darkness there, and that there's a lot of evidence that indicates that while they got rid of the acronym, they haven't really gotten rid of the programming, so to speak. And so I don't think all the programs were just wiped out. I think many, and I'm on the board of a public company, and so I see a lot of this data. A lot of the companies are actually keeping the programs, but just renaming them. Enlightened leaders recognize that there's no denying the research that the business case is there for women leaders in diverse leadership, a pipeline of diverse leaders, and the financial performance is there. There's more innovation. There's better decision making. There's a lot of data that shows that. So I'm discouraged by what's happened in the last year and a half, and quite honestly, a little pissed on a lot of days. But I'm also not giving up, because I actually think that most leaders and organizations know that they need women in their organizations to attract talent, retain talent, and drive better business outcomes. So that's kind of my take on that. I think that we're just going to see new acronyms like inclusion and belonging and other words that capture some of the sentiment, but with maybe less political baggage.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair, and that's good to know that things still exist. I mean, like you said, anybody who's paying attention, right? You'd have to really be have blinders on in your business if you don't recognize the value and benefit of having women in your organization.
But there's still all this manosphere bullshit happening, and maybe you saw the piece in the Atlantic this past week about this huge conservative right-wing movement that's trying to not, only take away our bodily autonomy rights, but our rights for a voice and a vote, our ability to, even work is sort of their dream scenario. So I don't want to also be Pollyannish and fail to recognize that there are a lot of forces out there that are blaming women for some of the challenges men are facing, instead of recognizing that maybe they need to evolve and maybe they need to, grow some new skills, instead of just thinking that the only solution is quieting women and taking women's power away.
Right, because that always works out super well for the men when they try that. Well, and as angry as I get about all of that, I also recognize that so much of it is like propaganda and like messaging and positioning and manipulation, and that manosphere isn't as big as they want you to think it is. And I think that women are smarter, like younger girls are smarter. And I think, they know that like we make people. And so you can be as mad as you want, but you should be mad at the society that created this system to exist, right? And so I try to remind myself, because my friends say, oh, you're such a man hater. And I'm like, well, I'm not a man hater, but the data is there, so what are you going to say? But it's not their fault, just like it's not our fault. Like it's like the society that we have allowed to continue, and this manipulation of media. It's just a lot of things. So it's not. I don't want to point my fingers at like men or women, but like this is where we are, right? And we have to shut it down. And I think there is going to be a pendulum swing where it's like, no, man, this ain't it.
Well, and obviously social media is just feeding the outrage because the algorithms reward the extremes, and so the extremes get a lot of attention instead of what's maybe moderate or midpoint of something. And so that's the real bummer, I think, about social media. It's had a lot of advantages, but I do think it's contributing to a lot of discourse and making it bigger and worse than it needs to be.
I agree. It's a crazy time. So speaking of which, I know in your book, the idea is to foster some change. So what do you hope that women, get from reading the book, and what would they move forward with?
Well, on an individual level or a micro level, I really hope that women will find the tools to build the career and life they want, like truly want, not what somebody else expects of them. And then on a macro scale, like I really want more women to engage in the workplace and to pursue roles that give them more influence, more power, yes, more meaning and more pay and all those things. But if we really want to change things, we need more women in positions of power who can change it for everyone so it works better for everyone. And I don't think we should be happy with, these small incremental increases of women in the C-suite, because when we're still in these really tiny numbers, it's very hard to drive significant change. So I want women to enjoy work. I want them to be able to flourish in the workplace with the toolkit we're giving them. And I want them to become a force of change, positive change that thinks about everybody instead of small groups of people.
And how would that, as a woman who just turned 50, like I saw a meme yesterday that said my inside thoughts have now become outside voices. And I was like, I relate to that so hard. I'm like, did I say that out loud? Yes, I did. And I don't care. But that is a gift of turning 50, being a 30-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 40-year-old in this workplace those are four different complete scenarios right there. There's a whole different world. So what advice do you have to the younger generations who are coming up, who might not be as justifiably angry from years of abuse, And, it's a little easier for us to find that fire, but if you're a little younger and uncertain, what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, I think that what I've seen in the women we've worked with, hundreds of women, that the first few years, they are naive in the workplace and they're expecting a meritocracy, and they're surprised that there's a lot of unwritten rules. And so I think as a young person, you have to really come into an organization and realize that it is not a meritocracy. It's not like college where you read the syllabus, you study, you get an A, and life goes on. It's not clear how you get an A in the workplace. And so you have to really study the dynamics and who are the players and who are the decision makers and who are the influencers and who gets things done, and really build relationships, across the organization. So I think as a young person, you don't really realize that you need to be doing this. You think it's your manager and the small group of people on your team, and that's kind of your heads down. So I would say big picture, like you got to be heads up. And there's a lot of guidance in the book for how to do that. But I think as you age, you start to experience like, oh my gosh, I got overlooked for the promotion. I can't believe he's making more than I am. We've all encountered that. And so learning to self advocate without bragging. And that also is a skill that you have to learn. Like you can't just come in and be like, well, I did this and I did this and I did this. And so there's a lot of, ways of self-advocating that are constructive. We exceeded our goals and I led the project, so that you can take credit, but you also have to kind of talk about it in the context of the business. I think that you can't go in and, just brag about yourself. You have to be able to say, and I helped achieve these business outcomes that are important to the organization. So I think once we start talking in the language that the businesses see as, relevant and creating outcomes, creating impact, making a difference, then we're more likely to get the results we want. But I tell you, Molly, the number of people that I've talked to that said, you know what, I've been in this company for 7 years in the same job and I just keep waiting for the promotion. I was like, guess what? That promotion is so not coming. And so how do you change your behavior so that it can happen? And that is really about sitting down with your manager. Here's my contributions. I delivered against these goals. What else do I need to show so that I can be considered for a promotion in the next cycle? And she's like, oh my gosh, I've never said those words. And I was like, yes, you have to say those words and you have to get their support. That's a big question we always recommend when you're talking to somebody inside the organization. And do I have your support? Because if they say no, then you can say, oh, tell me more. What do I need to do? Oh, show me what is going to be required. And if they say yes, then you can say, oh, great, let's focus on the timing. So I think that learning to have strategic conversations that are about self-advocacy is probably the most important thing anybody can learn.
I was going to ask you what's one thing you would suggest women should do, but there it is. I think in my life, I've always been good at that because I've gotten a lot of validation externally from like social media and stuff, not from family or, so I've been good at after the fact telling people what I've done so that, everyone knows about it, but not in a way that feels like braggadocious, because, that's how you get more business. That's how you get better clients. That's how you get bigger opportunities. Nobody's going to toot that horn for you. But it's a fine line, between sounding like a jerk and then just advocating for yourself. Actually, I shouldn't say that. It's really not, right? I think, like, as a woman, anytime you advocate for yourself, there's no fine line at all. Just do it.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be a fine line. I think there are certain phrases that can be more effective than other phrases. And I think if it's always I, then you're going to come off as very, self-centered instead of we or the team. And then my contribution was, or I led the team that was able to do these things. So I think that you don't want to forget that it takes a collective effort. And you don't want to just present yourself in isolation. It also helps to reach out to people to say, hey, I would love to have, feedback on this, and then keep track of that feedback throughout the year so that when it comes time to present in a quarterly or semi-annual or annual performance review, you can say, these are the accolades that I'm getting from my team, because most organizations want to know you're not just an individual performer, but you can actually accomplish things with and through other people in the company.
I think I've been a boss now longer than I've been an employee, so I could definitely resonate. If somebody came to me and gave me clear examples of that, how could I possibly argue? They might not be top of mind because they're one of many employees, right? I don't, I'm not keeping track in that sense. So it's good to be reminded, like, you know what, you do deserve that. And thank you for reminding me because, you can't do it all.
A lot of times we're reminding people that their manager isn't thinking about them all day. Their manager is thinking that you're just going to be doing your job. And they're not thinking about, are you outperforming the metrics that we laid out? They're in all kinds of meetings. They have a ton of direct reports. They might be overwhelmed with their own workload and meetings all day long. And so if you can make it simple and how you tee up your contribution. We have tools in our that come with the book that'll show people like how to track that kind of stuff, and then like how to tee it up in a simple way in a one-on-one with their manager. So it doesn't have to be hard.
I love that. Well, I have two new reasons to go get the book. Number one, to calculate what it is that you want in life. Because I talk to a lot of women about this, but I don't necessarily know how to get them there. So I will also encourage them to buy your book. Because I think right now, especially in my age group, there's a lot of women who are like perimenopausal or menopausal, lost their husband or divorced, kids are grown, never had any, and are just like in this new era of self-discovery. And they should all read the book. I feel like even if you're not in the corporate or business world, I guarantee there's a bunch of gems in there just to exist as a woman in the world.
Well, we've gotten that feedback from people, and that's really, warmed my heart, because I hadn't really, like, there was a woman, I think she was about 55, late 50s, and wrote some amazing messages to us, and like, oh my God, this is just what I needed right now in my life. And I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Because that isn't necessarily who I was visualizing when I was writing it. I mean, we say that on the book cover that we are focusing on people who were starting and needed a strong foundation, or were stuck or stalled, or maybe solo in a male-dominated industry. And so we started to lay out like those kind of people, but then realizing like, okay, age actually isn't really a thing here. It really doesn't. It's not a dividing line. Oh, you could be 20, you could be 60, you could be, whatever. So hopefully it can unlock for people at different stages. I mean, I always also thought about it, Molly, as a parenting book. So in raising two kids, I always had like one parenting book that I would go back to over and over. When your kids come home and you say, "Are you high?" And then the answer is yes. And then I'm like, oh, so I'm like, that's very serious consequence to our family rules. I'm going to have to meet you back here in 24 hours and we'll discuss it. And then what I'd really do is then run to that one parenting book, like, what do I do now? And my husband and I would discuss and debate. And so that's how I envisioned this book, is to be like, it could be read front to back, but the idea that you could be encountering a certain thing in your life and just be able to go to that section and get some insight and some action steps that can be really useful. So that's kind of how I conceived of it.
I love it. It's like a WWKD. What would Kelly do?
Or what could you do? It doesn't have to be me.
Well, yeah. What I would do is probably curse people on Facebook. So I'll go with your version. That feels like a better route. Kelly, thank you for taking time to sit with us and chat. And I think, every woman is kind of I think we're all entering into a new phase of life. I think that we're all like, the blinders are off. We're in the grand awakening of society. And so, I think no matter what your age is, get the book, read it, soak it up, get your inner Tawanda. Somebody posted a picture of Kathy Bates from Fried Green Tomatoes the other day, and I was like, that is my spirit animal right now, is Tawanda, Kathy Bates, when she ran those girls in the parking lot. I'm like, every single woman on the planet feels a little bit of that in her soul right now, because you open the news and you're just like, this can't be. This is real. This is actually happening. And then you just close it again. I'm
operating on like low grade rage like every day. And so how to not put my head in the sand and continue to stay informed, get involved, and really be part of the solution. And that's really the choice I'm making. I know a lot of other people aren't making that choice because that's the way they manage their anxiety, but we're not going to get a new outcome. We're not going to get new leadership. We're not going to get a new, sense of peace if we don't work for it.
I agree. We chatted a little before the show, but, a lot of my friends and people I talk to will tell me, well, just try to focus on the things that you can change, because otherwise you'll be overwhelmed. And I get that, and that's some very good, like, Zen Buddha advice, for sure. But at the same time, we can influence more. We can do more. And if more women are in positions of leadership, then they can't kill our DEI programs. And if women are in positions of power on school boards and police, sheriffs, and all the things, right, then they won't be able to make these barbaric laws against our, bodily autonomy. It won't happen, right? Like the bill that was announced yesterday about being able to kill a woman if you think she's trying to, that shouldn't even exist, right? Somebody said to me, "Oh, don't let it upset you. It'll never get passed." It should have the fact that those words were written down on a piece of paper and that man wasn't immediately like expelled professionally, personally, spiritually, religiously, and like the fact
Totally.
that man can show his face today and not be stoned to death, like, not to pull out some biblical stuff here, but like that's where we're at. And so, yeah, it does matter. You do have to make more money. You do have to rise in power, positions of power. You do have to run for office. You do got to show up to the school board meetings, and you got to do something. And
Totally.
so if whatever it is, right? But it can't be nothing.
Exactly. And I love the distinction you're making. And we talk about that in the book too, like control the controllables, which is really your words and your actions. But really everything else, not everything else. There's also a bucket of things. You can't control the weather and pandemics and whatever. But there is a huge bucket of things in the middle that you can influence. And you can influence by engaging, and you can influence it positively. And so I think that would be my push for people who really just say control what you can control, because that's just one dimension, and we can influence way more than we realize.
Amen. I'm not religious, but amen.
Neither.
Listen, we got to do, I mean, that's why I started this podcast. What do we do next? Like, I'm just trying to do something and give people a break, give myself a break. Just like I'm going to buy the book and read it because, I've also found that it helps to oscillate and not fire hose all the bad information. And so I've been spending time reading and learning and not just tuning out on bad TV, but actually like using my brain. And so getting your book and reading it feels like a really good opportunity to not doom scroll for a few hours.
Well, thanks, Molly. I appreciate that. And I welcome your feedback once you do, because the whole goal was for it to feel inspiring and empowering, and helping women see they have more power within them than they realize. So I'll be curious to hear your feedback.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to love it, but I will definitely, I have a friend coming to visit me, so I'll have her bring it to me because you can't get mail in Costa Rica. So people are like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't have an address. They're like, I'm like, I literally don't have an address. Like, if you mail me something, I'll never get it. But I will have her bring it to me. She's coming in a couple weeks, so I will get it and have the physical copy, which, I don't have many of in Costa Rica. So I will present it proudly. Deal. For sure. Well, Kelly, thank you for coming on the show today. I know your time is very valuable, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for everybody listening today. Please go buy the book right away. Get it. Leave a review. If you are not a woman in professional world, buy 3 of them and give them to young women in your life. You got nieces, you got cousins, you got granddaughters, you got daughters. We got a lot of women out here in the world. Buy them the book, right? It goes a long way. Plus, one small thing that you can do is buy the book and leave a review. And it might seem silly, but it's not, because the more that we see women's voices highlighted on Amazon and these bestseller areas, which, sidebar, I have to say that I read 130 books on business development over 3 years, and it was mostly men. And then I went on a mission to only read women's voices, and there wasn't enough of them. And they were very poorly produced, which just made me mad, because women deserve awesome producers. So it matters that you go get this book and that you leave a review, so that more women are platformed by these major platforms and more women are inspired to also write books. So when we're talking about what can you do next, this is a good one. Go buy the book, buy a couple copies, hand it out like it's the Bible at a Trump rally, and go inspire some women.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you. Well, I mean it. If you can't tell, I just got real passionate about everybody buying the book. But it does matter. It does matter. And maybe if somebody hands that book to a young woman in their life, it will change their life and change generations to come. And it really is that serious. So go buy the book and comment on this podcast when it comes out and let us know what you think. And until then, Kelly, thank you again. And to everybody listening, thank you for dealing with my nonsense. I appreciate your support. And until next time, please be excellent to each other and just keep fighting the good fight. Thanks, y'all.